welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. It's 12:30, therefore it's the ACSOM Bulletin. I am going to do my best to stand in for Laura Bradburn. That is a difficult task on a Friday afternoon. That is temporary. Laura will be back with us on Sunday for the game. I'm joined by Tony Haggerty and Jim Orr, and can I just say, lads, it's an absolute pleasure to join you. It doesn't happen often enough on a Celtic State of Mind. How's your week been? Jim Orr, I'll start with you. How's your week been?
Yeah, choked up with the cold, apart from that. All right. Yeah.
All right. Remember, for months, it was, how's your week been? It's been great, apart from Celtic. Oh, well, we've got an hour to talk about that. Tony, how about yourself? You've been busying yourself, preparing yourself for Sunday. I think there must be between 8 and 10 of the ACSOM troops got tickets for Sunday, I think, going by the chat group.
I think a few of them are going, and obviously I'm going in a professional capacity for the Celtic way, so I was on their pod this morning and I said the most important thing had arrived, my cup final parking ticket. That's all that really mattered. You don't get a car parking space, you're up against it, but I managed
How
to
the other half live. How the other half
I know, Jim, we've got to park in Asda and risk a ticket.
Jim, it's not even accreditation for the game, it's a car parking ticket, so I still might not get in.
At this time of year, I think we have to remember the elderly who don't have tickets for the cup final, like your pal here. So he'll be wandering up there looking for a spare ticket. So please keep us in your thoughts.
Let's do that, right? We're 90 seconds in. We're 90 seconds in. Let's put out a wee call for Jim Orr, who will be in and around Hampden Park on Sunday. If you've got a ticket, because I've seen a few on Twitter saying I can't go or I don't want to go because of everything that's happening. If you've got a ticket that Jim can utilise, let us know. And if I miss your comment, because it sometimes gets a bit busy, give us a DM, email us, do all of that kind of stuff, Jim. We'll get you to the game.
Save the elderly. Yeah, good. Thank you.
Help the aged, as Paul once said.
Help the aged, yes. We're a fast declining demographic, so, it's not the same watching the cup final on the telly. That's all I'll say. That's my appeal.
It's not the same watching the games on the telly, Jim. And somebody actually asked me the question the other night, we were watching the Ross County game, why aren't you at the game, Paul? And I said, well, because I'm here, because I'm covering the game. I should be at the games. We've got the tickets for the games. And, to ensure that ACSOM covers the games, we are forced at the moment to do it in this scenario. We'd like to do it maybe at the stadium. I know that, for example, Celtic Fans TV do a brilliant broadcast after the stadium, having a wee chat to the fans. So we're not going to do that because that's Celtic Fans TV do that so well. But we tried a few different things and we would like to broadcast in the future. Jim's came up with a few ideas. It's something we'll continue to look at. Hopefully, once we're through this next stage of the development of the COVID, because we know that is a moving target at the moment. If anything happens, because I know that Nicola Sturgeon was giving a briefing at 12:15, anything that affects the football on Sunday, give us a shout on the comment section and we will try and bring you in as much as possible. We're going to look back at the midweek game and the aftermath, Tony, because you and I got some stick for our comments on Starfelt, and we're going to look ahead to Sunday and Ange Postecoglou's first cup final in Scotland. He was spotted, Jim, out with, this is a narrative that appeared as on Twitter, he's out with Gio. But we had a pair of eyes on the situation in said restaurant stroke cafe, wherever it was in the West End of Glasgow. And we know that they weren't out. They just bumped into each other, didn't they? For a moment or two.
Well, that's your Declan McConville with his Ange tracker. He just tracks Ange down. Wherever he is, Declan's no far behind. Yeah, so interesting photograph. Wonder what they were saying to each other.
I know. I mean, the thing is...
Ange tracker or Ange stalker? There's a
both.
Line there with Declan, isn't there? You know what I mean? It's
both. Aye, both.
Wherever Ange goes, Declan goes. You know, I'm a bit worried. And if I was Ange, I'd be worried, you know.
Honestly, the amount of images that we've seen of wee Dec and Ange, if you're in the comment section, Dec, come on, fight your corner. The thing is, though, Tony, you've got your, going on 22, 23 years experience within Scottish journalism. In the past, there were occasions where managers of both sides were pals. We know that. We know that Tommy Burns and Walter Smith were pals. We know that, right? And we know that players during Henrik Larsson's era would meet up. Celtic and Rangers players would meet up. There's also been the opposite of that. It wouldn't be a massive surprise to you, though, if they were quite friendly, would it?
What's the problem with this? I've got no issue with this at all. The Celtic Rangers manager are sitting down in a cafe speaking to each other. It doesn't matter for how long it's for. Why does anybody get a problem with this? I think it's a great thing. I'd like to see more of it. Because there's more that unites you than divides you in terms of football. That's the way it should be, should it not? Am I reading it wrong? Was Ange not allowed to have a coffee or a sit down with Giovanni Bronckhorst? Where's the problem here?
I don't think it's an issue, Tony, but you're thinking, what's the chances of that happening?
Well,
plus Declan's there as well.
But I'm just waiting for the new show, Ange and Deck. You know what I mean? That's the double act. But they were speaking. They were pictured. It's blown into some kind of big story. Is it really? Celtic Rangers manager half coffee.
I think Ange would even be surprised at that, would he not? The reaction to it. I mean, Van Bronckhorst knows this as a player. Yeah. He knows the city, which is important. But this is new to Ange, isn't it? This being under a microscope to this degree, isn't it?
I think he would be surprised at the kind of furore or uproar that it created with a picture of two men from the opposite sides of the city in terms of their footballing proclivities. And management. But, it's two guys just having a coffee and talking football, no doubt, and talking about their respective teams. I'm all for that. I'm all for players doing the same thing. And I'm all for supporters mingling and mixing and getting along. It's, as I say, I have no issue with it at all.
Talking about supporters getting on, Tony, it is all about the positivity. We know only too well over the last year how people have suffered at the hands of COVID and the mental health issues that brings. And you see online a lot of the time people coming to us directly, Tony, saying that, even something like a 1 hour show of Celtic fans talking together with a community, people commenting, helped them through some, worrying times. And when it comes down to it, that's what it's all about. It's about the community aspect of it, isn't it? It's not about negativity online, the online harassment and bullying that a few members of ACSOM have been subjected to over the piece. So I totally get that. And as I say, thanks everybody for the messages. We do get a lot of messages coming through from people who listen into the shows. Paul Cockwell, we know, is a Hibby. He's a Hibby, and I'm going to bring him up as the first commenter today. Talking about changes, don't play Roger McGregor or Joe Hart. Give youth a chance. Right. Come on now, Paul. Let's have a look at Ross County, the game against Ross County, now that the dust has settled. Talking about furores, I'm going to come to yourself first. Jim Orr, 97th minute winner. Everybody complained about it. The newswriters were writing their copy before the winning goal went in. We seemed to annoy quite a few people by winning that game, Malky Mackay included.
I think it shows you how one goal can just change everything. I think if it did end up one each, I think there'd be a different narrative for everyone the last few days. You score a goal like that, and as lots of people have said, that could change the season. Said before the game in the WhatsApp ACSOM chat that this could be a pivotal game because of the fact with so many injuries, and I've not been a big fan of Abada, but I said it was good to see Abada playing through the middle, and hopefully Abada would step up. And the wee guy did step up. I thought he played pretty well. Apart from the first maybe 5 minutes or so, I think Ross County looked up for it, and then bit by bit we start playing our game, and should have been 2 or 3 goals up at half time. Better team by miles. They bring on a couple of physical guys. That kind of changed that a wee bit. We lose a silly goal. Harsh sending off. Big man Stuxley at the back. Played with 10 men. We were the better team, dominant team. Could have scored another 2 or 3 goals. Should have got a penalty. The guy puts 2 hands up to deflect the ball. But there's your karma straight away, bang, Tony Ralston goal. I think if we hadn't scored the goal, I think it'd have been doom and gloom in the kind of the Celtic State of Mind family. But getting the goal just keeps us on our coattails, and that's what we need to do. Again, a shocking refereeing performance. Every game, I think we're saying the same thing. And I'm sure it's not just Celtic fans that are saying that. I mean, you see the Aberdeen St Johnstone game last week, you're thinking, this is awful, so, and there's lots of money at stake, not just at the top of the table, the bottom of the table as well. I mean, that goal last week could relegate St Johnstone at the end of the season, so something has to be done about referees. But in terms of Ross County, just go up there and get the points, and there's nothing like a last-minute winner, not even a last-minute winner, 96-minute winner, and that just cheers everyone up. So keep on the coattails till we get to 2nd of January, yeah.
Yeah, 96 minutes and 5 seconds, I think it was. So we crept into the 97th minute, Tony, which annoyed a few people as well. But when we look back on some pivotal seasons in Celtic's history, and I think back to the centenary year, I think back to the season that Jim knows only too well when we won the league under Wim Jansen, and there's certain games, and some of them, sometimes you look at them almost as sometimes turning points, and other ones absolutely pivotal to the. And I know people will say every point is pivotal to the outcome. Of course it is, but that could so easily have been a draw on Wednesday night. And I think last season it probably would have been a draw. I'm not having a dig at any of the personnel last season, but there does seem to be a completely different approach and a different belief in the team that Ange is building here, Tony.
I wrote a piece yesterday in the Celtic Way about Tony Ralston being kind of Celtic's answer to Roy the Rovers, but just that team channeling the 1988 spirit that Billy McNeil fostered, kind of ragtag and bobtail team that he cobbled together to try and beat high-spending Rangers, and they did. And their forte, their modus operandi was last second goals, last gasp goals. I was even quoting Billy Connolly. Remember he did that thing with Skip with William McIlvany in the jungle. They were standing at the barriers, and he was asking him about that indomitable spirit that centenary team had. And Billy Connolly said, there was guys in the jungle saying, it's all right, there's a minute and a half to go, we'll still win this. It was the manifestation of 90 minutes, don't let go. And Ange just channeled that as well. And you look at that goal the other night, 3 things about it. Owen Moffat, trust the process. Mm-hmm. Boy, didn't he want to be a have-a-go hero and a young guy. The temptation's there to blast one over the bar or try and do something heroic. Shunted it to McGregor, who knew, and who then shunted it to Rogic. Last chance. This is your last chance. And Rogic does the rest. Twinkle toes, beats the guy, hangs it up, and Anthony Ralston's, I think he's took a run and jumped a trampoline before he's headed that ball into it because the height he was up. Mm-hmm. But that was just desire, application, effort, and a will to win. Celtic just refused not to win that game the other night. Nothing less than a win was going to do them. And it didn't matter when it came. They pummeled Ross County with 10 men. And you look at that centenary season, and I picked a few out. Joe Miller's goal at Boxing Day at Tannadice, which I was at that game, fell down the stairs, never actually saw it, but I knew it hit the back of the net because the crowd went mental. There was a Paul McStay goal and a 2-2 draw against Hearts, pile driver for the edge of the box. There was the 2 goals in the Scottish Cup semi-final, and Mark McGee and Andy Walker, 2 goals in the last 4 minutes. And then there's McAvenny's last-minute winner in the Cup final itself, where Billy McNeil said the fairy tale thing about that. And it's you can see similar things happening with this Ange team and the way it's kind of fallen into place. And as Jim said, there's nothing like a last-minute goal. Doesn't matter what minute it is, 96, 97, it doesn't matter, but there's nothing like that to give you that. It's like a shot of adrenaline, isn't it? Everybody, you see, the narrative is completely changed to a joyous one from a doom and gloom one. And it doesn't matter how you do it. Celtic just have to win. And in the centenary season, they just dug out ways of winning games. There was people were saying, it's all right, there's a minute to go. We'll create a chance, we'll do it. It's a bit similar here. So, you have to salute that, basically.
Paul, you have to ignore the noise, Paul. I mean, you talked about ruffled a few feathers. These are people that are not worth listening to. As I said before, don't argue with idiots because they'll bring you to their level. Don't listen to idiots. I mean, there's Malky Mackay on at the end of the game. You're playing against 10 men. I mean, we want 20 minutes injury time, surely go and win the game, and he's complaining. So these are just idiots, basically,
I was delighted with the way they played with 10 men.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
With 10 men. I mean, they pummeled them and they deserved the goal in the end up. And as Jim said, I mean, what's more blatant than a guy putting his hands out like that, the two hands, to stop a ball going towards the opposition goal?
Mm-hmm.
See, the thing, Tony, you mentioned that interview between Billy Connolly and McIlvanney in the Old Jungle was used in the absolutely brilliant BBC video, which was the official Celtic centenary video, which I got in the Christmas of 88, the Christmas of 88, by which time, of course, we were into the following season, which wasn't as memorable. But I must have watched that a million times, and being the anorak that I am, I then made it a mission fairly recently to track down all the old VHS tapes because they're dead stock. They're never going to be put onto DVD, a lot of them. And just recently, I was working on this one. You remember the old Celtic collection? As if by magic. Look at that on the back. Yeah. Chairman Kevin Kelly with a message to the Celtic support. This was the brainchild of Terry Cassidy, the Celtic collection. This was Celtic creating content 90s style. And we're going to be doing a few things over Christmas when I wouldn't expect anyone to be dialing in to do some bulletins, but we will be putting content out on the channel Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Boxing Day, etc., with a twist, and it'll be part of the ACSOM retrospective. There is a point to this, Jim, because I was watching this with interest the other day, and there was a section on there about Save Our Celts, and some of the content within that video was all about the Save Our Celts meeting. Now, remind me, was it Shettleston Halls? It was that?
That's correct, Paul. Yeah, Shettleston.
Now, the reason I bring it up is obviously we have spoken in the past that you were involved in that movement hugely. And please, for anyone who hasn't watched or listened to the interview that we did with Jim a while back, that was the first time I met you, I think, Jim. Check it out on the YouTube channel. It's very informative. And we've done a few follow-ups with Willie Wilson, Tom Grant, David Lowe, and others. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because we still have that backdrop of disdain in amongst the Celtic support. And I wanted to ask you at this stage, because you've experienced a movement, a street movement, and the pitfalls of that. You've told me that some fans were for you, some were dead against it, etc. We've come to this moment where I would have expected some kind of engagement, I think, between the club and the fan base in relation to the appointment of Higgins. What's your thoughts now? What happens next on this one? Because, I mean, the Celtic fans were in fine voice and in full voice on Wednesday. We spoke about the energy levels that seems to inject into the side. A 97th minute winner. How much was that down to the momentum push that you get from the fans? We're obviously, we've experienced a couple of 2 games of silent protest. Still nothing from the club. What do we do next? What happens next, do you think?
It's a good question. If you ask the question, should the fans do anything if they're not happy about something? 100% yes. I'm sure everyone, like most people have heard the testimonies that they've been on Twitter of some of the fans who have their lives completely ruined by the Offensive Behaviour Football Act. Just quite shocking. And if the person the club are potentially thinking of appointing was right up the middle of that, then I think that's as good a reason to protest. But if you are going to protest, I think there's a few things you don't want to do. You don't want to antagonise your own fans, and you don't want to affect the team. And I think this protest has done both of those. So I think that's been a wee bit unfortunate. And I think if you're going to protest, then it has to be an effective protest. That what happens at the end of it, something actually happens. And to be honest, if I'm Ian Bank here, I'd be sitting back thinking, be as silent as much as you want, guys. It doesn't affect me. All you're doing is antagonising your fellow fans and you're affecting the team. I mean, the Celtic team shouldn't need fans to win games of football, but certainly the Livingston game, where that was the game where we're going to get within 2 points if we win it. It was a huge game, and then it was quite quiet that first 30 minutes. And I know that fans, should be able to sing themselves and don't depend on the GB, etc., but that should have been a game that everyone gets behind the team and can raise the roof and go those 2 points. So I'm not so sure how effective a silent protest is. I'm not so sure how effective throwing tennis balls onto the park is. I think the only thing that affects boards is cold hard cash, and I think the fact that season ticket money's in the bank, so that's not going to affect it. So you're then looking at maybe match day income. what's the match day income, the Paradise windfall money, match programmes, the catering outlets, etc. I've no idea how much money that brings in. I don't know, 40, 50 grand a match maybe, who knows. But unless you have people in the pockets, they're not going to be bothered. Because, as I said, if I'm in bank here, would I be bothered with this? I don't think I would be if I'm in bank here. It doesn't affect me. And as I said, I think all you're doing... I mean, there was a wee bit last Sunday where fans were actually shouting over, you can stick your silent protest, where the sun doesn't shine type of thing. So again, all that's done is antagonise fellow fans, a wee bit of friction in there, which is not great. And then there was some stories during the week, I had Juranovic after the game saying that the players were talking about silent. So basically, if you're in bank here, you would lap this up, because I think it's a wee bit of an own goal. I understand why they're doing that 100%, and I think they should do it if this guy Higgins is about to kind of turn up at Celtic Park. They should do it. I'm not so sure this is the best way of doing it.
You remember back in the day, Jim, what kind of backlash from some sections of the Celtic fans did you guys get?
Well, it's not like modern day social media type thing. I mean, everything was pretty much manually done. So you're handing out flyers, and for every second person, first person will say well done, son. Next person will say F off. This is Celtic. What you can never do is tell Celtic supporters what to do. You can't do that. You can't say to Celtic supporters, you should not go to this match. You've no right to tell people that. So all you can do is let people figure it out for themselves. And if back in 1990, you could see that the club needed saved at that point in time. There's an interesting article in the Celtic Wiki, which I saw just a few years ago, talking about the name Save Ourselves, and it was quite plaintive, whereas Celtic for Change was a bit more dynamic, etc. But back then, Celtic needs saved. And Fergus McCann saved. He didn't change Celtic. He saved Celtic, And at the moment, this current time, we need a Celtic for Change. We need somebody to change things. We don't need saved, because we're a well-run club. We've got, serious money in the bank.
Yeah.
It's just the people who are running the club, I think there's a bit of a lack of vision there. I don't think they stand up for the club, and there's countless examples of that. How you change that, I'm not so sure, because you're dealing with billionaires now, and it's a completely different ballgame, because back then, you were dealing with a few families who inherited their shares, and with the best will in the world, when people inherit their shares, that doesn't mean that they're best placed to manage the business, and that's what we had back there. So these weren't rich people. They were people who just wanted to stay at Celtic Park, understandably so. But I think they were easily got at. When people like David Lowe come along and Brian Dempsey come along and Fergus McCann come along, I think they're easy to get at. You're not going to get at Dermot Desmond and these kind of guys, And I understand what the Celtic Trust are doing in terms of shares, but I think that's a long way away as well in terms of the number of shares they've got. So I think it's a very difficult thing. And there isn't maybe a lot to do, and I think fans are frustrated, and I think they're doing some things just now that maybe, from a personal point of view, I think I'd have done something a wee bit different than that. But even if you do something different, I'm not kind of sure how successful you're going to be with this. So it's a very long-winded answer.
No, but it is appreciated with you having the specialist knowledge, and I'm intrigued by that period of the club's history. And like you say, we can't compare as such, because we were on our knees and there was no sign of the major changes that were required. For example, a new stadium. We didn't have people at the club at that time, Jim, who could come up with the cash required for a new stadium. So we needed saved, absolutely. We don't need saved now, but there definitely is a change required in the boardroom at Celtic. Now, let's get back to some of the performances during the week, because these will directly impact Sunday's game. Kaplan Mark comes in. Ralston and Roderick's performances have proved how inept a previous manager was. Would you go with that, Tony, or is it how good our current manager is?
I'd go with how good our current manager is. I've touched upon it before. The performances that he's managed to drag out of Tom Roderick and Tony Ralston has been inspirational. It's all down to man management. Just giving guys the confidence and the belief to go out there and do what they do. Roderick is now playing 90 minutes consistently, and he's kind of bossing it, isn't he? Whereas he would play like for an hour or whatever and play bit parts here and there. But he's strung everything, he's married everything together with performances, consistency, goals, big moments, big game player. The player that we always thought was there but wasn't the sum of all the parts. Now Ange has managed to get the sum of all the parts, which is terrific, and Celtic are reaping the benefit, and he's only 29, remember? So he has another few years, possibly at his peak, to play at this football club, thankfully. Ralston's just miraculous, really, isn't it? It's just a meteoric kind of rise, and well done to him. Just well done, and well done to the manager, and just giving that boy the fuel and the energy and the mental fortitude. Jim said it earlier, block out the noise. Don't argue with idiots and don't argue with people. And I'd have been one of those people that would have argued, because I genuinely said, and I've said it before, that I didn't think Ralston was good enough. Change my tune on that one. You know, he's made everybody who was maybe of that opinion change their tune on that through no fault of the manager as well. I mean, the manager's he has performed miracles with both of those players, but seeing something that others maybe didn't see and letting them go out there and express themselves, and the two of them have they're buying what Ange is selling, and it's worked out to both their betterment and to Celtic's betterment as well, because they're two pivotal players in the team now, and probably with Joe Hart first three put down, if all three are fit.
See, the thing when you're talking about Tony Ralston, I look at what was Tony Ralston prior to this season. He was a whipping boy, and by the age of 21, I mean, he had made his debut at 17, but by the age of 21, he had made 10 appearances for Celtic. And, you know, he made one appearance last season, and, you know, after that, he just disappeared again. And you talk about mental fortitude. I can't think of a player that's had a similar trajectory as Tony Ralston's had. He comes in, he's a contemporary of Kieran Tierney, so they're roughly the same age. You've got Tierney down the left. You knew you wouldn't have a similar down the right, but he comes into the side and he's a young hopeful, makes his debut. Another one of the legacy players of Ronnie Deila makes his debut under Ronnie. But then he's in and out the side, and you remember that image against Barcelona, against Neymar at PSG, rather, and it didn't look as though it was aging well. But I see that popping up again, because that grin on his face, he's got the right to have that grin on his face. But at the age of 21, he's made 10 appearances. At the age of 21, Callum McGregor hadn't kicked the ball for Celtic. And look at him now, he's the captain of the club. And I think that both of those players are shining examples of any young player coming through. And a lot of them have already bitten the bullet. A lot of them have already left the club before they play for Celtic. But that patience, Jim, I think that players want it now. They want all the fame, the adulation. They want the games. They want it early. But look at those two players, albeit Ralston made his debut at 17. By the age of 21, he had made 10 appearances for Celtic. By the age of 21, Callum McGregor hadn't played for Celtic. And I think they can be used as examples for the young guys coming through.
I think there's two things with Tony Ralston for me. One is the way we're playing. And this inverted fullback, I think, suits him down to the ground. And I recall watching games early in the season and just watching where Tony Ralston was. He was like in the centre circle. You know, he was taking the ball and then pointing to the left, pointing to the right. I'm thinking this is a whole new ball game for him. But secondly, the most important thing I think is having a run of games in the team. I think any player who's in the Celtic Academy is a good player, is an exceptional player. Give them game times and let's see what they're like. And if you hear Tony Ralston, you get a game here and a game there. It's really hard to build anything up, momentum, confidence or anything. And that's why I know, before Tony jumps on Mikey Johnson this week, Mikey Johnson's somebody for me, I think, you have to give him 8 or 9 games to see what he's like, because Tony Ralston's shown that. I'm going to make a wee point, because I wasn't on last week, about Dundee United game. Easily the best domestic performance of the season, I thought. The one before that was the first half at Hibs. And people said Tom Roderick was the kind of common denominator of those games. Mikey Johnson played both of those games. Jota another wing against Hibs, and Forrest another wing against United. Very rarely this season did we play two out-and-out wingers who took players on. Abada's never a winger, doesn't take players on. Good up the middle. But there was 2 games where were the best games of the season with 2 wingers who took people on, who frightened defenders, who defenders had to then double up against them, which then create space. Who's going to take advantage of the space? Enter Tom Roderick. You know, so I think players, long-winded answer again, I think players need a number of games, and then you can assess, you think they can make it or no? I think coming in and playing a game here and a game here, especially for a team like Celtic, 60,000 fans on your back straight away, games that you have to win, high-risk games, I think it does take a lot of mental fortitude to do that. But I think what Tony Ralston's had this year is a number of games in the team, and he's shown he's a good player. He is a good player, and he's playing in a system that suits him. And I think because of the demands of Celtic, younger players maybe don't get that chance to play 19 games, in succession. And I think that's one of the major things this season. We see how good a player he is, and long may that continue.
It's a good point, particularly on Tommy Rogic, because when you look at the games that Rogic has played this season, he has already matched his final tally in terms of appearances for last season, said this other day, and he's made 3 more appearances than he did in the previous season, where he only made 22 appearances for Celtic. So you get that game time, Tony, and you get a bit of, form and a bit of confidence. So would you agree with Jim, or have you seen enough when it comes to Mikey Johnson? I've got my own theory on Mikey. I think he needs to do what Christie and to a lesser degree Ralston have done. They went away and they worked on their physical attributes, and they came back as better players. I mean, you compare a picture of Tony Ralston now to that picture when he's in front of Neymar, and look at his shoulders. He's went away and worked, and he's a far more athletic player. He's a strong player. You can see that. He was always quite a hefty player when it came to the physicality, but he has worked on it. Mikey Johnson, I don't think has, and I don't think Lewis Morgan did either, hence the reason he left the club.
See, if you need to be told that, then there's something no there in your makeup. And I get what Jim's saying about Mikey Johnson, but I don't think Mikey Johnson played particularly well against Hibs or Dundee United. He never made...
I thought he did.
That's fair enough. That's a matter of opinion, isn't it? I don't think he was particularly telling against Dundee United. Maybe slightly better in the Hibs game. But I think Mikey Johnson could benefit from maybe going on loan to somewhere and getting that extended run of games, because I just don't see him getting it with Celtic, because he's had, in my opinion, a lot of chances to try and nail down a regular first team place, and he's just failed to convince all the time. There's just something lacking there. I don't see it, but some people do. That's fine, and I guess that's what makes it the game it is. But I just don't see Mikey Johnson featuring in that Celtic team long term.
When we're talking,
I'm not saying, sorry, just to clarify, I'm not saying Mikey Johnson should be in the team. I'm just saying I think it's hard to assess the guy unless he's had 9 or 10 games in succession.
To do that.
I think he's been in and out of the team, and I think to get back to the Dundee United and the Hibs game, you don't even have to take players on if they know you've got the skills to get past someone. They're a bit more weighty. If you're playing against a badder, so they're going to double up, and then all of a sudden that creates space.
I still didn't see him making telling contributions in either of those games.
When we're looking at that area of the park, I think it's one of the biggest dilemmas Ange is going to face on Sunday. Who do we play left? Who do we play right? Now, Jim, for a while, you've been saying that Abada's not a right-sided player, and I think everybody your name was on the tip of our tongues during the match day coverage on Wednesday night, because Abada opens the scoring. Because you've been saying for a while, play him through the middle. We played it through the middle, and he was effective. Montgomery wasn't as effective on the left. I don't think Juranovic was all that effective on the right. So there's obviously quite a few different factors in this in terms of the fitness of several players. But how do we face Hibs? I mean, the point yesterday, the discussion we had with Kevin Graham and JP Mason yesterday was about the fact that Hibs, one of, if not their most dangerous players, will be playing down the right. So it's important that we get that right, if you like. It's probably due to that fact that I think Juranovic is going to revert back to left back. I don't know if Montgomery will remain in front of him, but Juranovic, I feel, will be playing left back, Abada on the right, and that's all based on Kyogo being fit. Is it a concern for you, Jim, going into Sunday's game, that we're playing with Montgomery with his lack of experience, not a great game behind him on Wednesday night, and on the right-hand side, Juranovic is completely out of position playing in that role, because once he has to cross the ball, it shows that he's out of position.
I think we're kind of down to the bare bones in terms of players, so we'll have to play the cards that we've got, I think. Is Greg Taylor back? Is he injured? Or
he was on the bench on Wednesday, so he'll be fit.
I'd play him. I'd play him. I think I think with Martin Boyle on that wing, I think Taylor's a better tackler than Scales. He's a more experienced player, so I would go for Taylor. against Boyle there. And bringing Roger for Beaton, I think. And if nobody else can come back, nobody else is available to come back. If Kyogo comes back, then obviously that's maybe move Abada to the right and leave it Juranovic, because as you said, I thought Juranovic was really poor the other night. Final ball was awful. Montgomery wasn't great. I mean, it's kind of strange that when he plays further back and comes forward, he looks really good. But when he plays further forward, he's maybe not as good as you think he is. But maybe he's having a wee dip in confidence as well. But he would also help tracking back against Boyle because he's a left-footed player. So I think if there's no more injured players coming back, I think that'd be my two changes: Taylor for Scales and Roger for Beaton.
Is it an option, Tony, for Scales to push up to where Montgomery was? Because, I mean, we were singing his praises at half-time and a lot of the comments we got at full-time were completely different. But he has played there. He played there for his previous club, Shamrock Rovers, of course.
Well, it is an option, but I don't know. I don't think Kyogo will start. He might be on the bench at a push. But I just think that Ange will throw a curveball in there. Because I was writing my team down this morning, and I've got Hart in goal, Juranovic right back, Starfelt, Carter Vickers, centre backs, Taylor at left back. I think Beaton will miss out because you'll go with Rogic, Turnbull and McGregor. Bad will be through the middle, and I think he might throw a flanker and play Ralston further forward. Because as Jim said, Juranovic's final ball in the wing positions was terrible the other night. Ralston's a much better crosser. You've got width at Hampden, right? And see if you've got Ralston further forward, you've also got the added chance that Ralston will score as well. It's just a thought. And because Ralston's got 5 goals and 5 assists this season, right? He's actually pretty good going forward. And I think because of your lack of personnel, he might throw a spanner in the work just to kind of outfox Hibs and play Ralston further forward. It's very hard to second guess the manager, and then I don't know. He might even keep Moffat, because he played at the end and did what he was told, on the other flank. And I quite liked Moffat. I thought he was quite tidy.
I was going to ask on the back of the point Jim made about players needing games.
Yeah.
Moffat comes on, does well, part of the goal, like you say, kept his cool and just laid the ball off. These are the
kind of things that right in front of the manager's eye for a cup final. And you think to yourself, you know what? You got the memo there, son. You didn't do anything stupid, because the temptation was for Moffat to blast that, try and be a last minute hero, but no. You can't underestimate that quickness of thought, because the clock's ticking down. He's a young guy. It's a game that Celtic must win, and he kept his composure. A wee dink, just a side, square pass, and it's a pressure situation. But he gives it to his captain, because he knows his captain is going to shunt it out wider to Rogic, and then you're throwing it into the mixer. And Ralston made it his own, which again, that desire, and I just think that I think we're fine at the back with Juranovic and Taylor. I just think Ralston would be more effective for this game in a more prominent role forward. Could be completely wrong. I mean, Ralston plays anyway, regardless if he plays right back or
right.
Wide right, but he plays in my team anyway. So it's just the manager fitting the rest round about that. But I think a lot of the Celtic might want to see him further forward, because he's got very good delivery. I mean, he had the game against Dundee where he set up the hat-trick of goals, didn't he?
He's got the best delivery if you're comparing him against Juranovic and Abada down that right-hand side.
I mean, Juranovic the other night, his delivery was deplorable, and I think at one point it came through in the commentary. You heard Ange screaming at him for one that he put in, and it was put it into no man's land. When there was acres of space to find somebody, and you actually heard Ange, because I think he was shouting Joseph. I think he shouted about 3 or 4 times, and he was utterly raging. And you think to yourself, well, he can't be as wasteful as that. So I'd rather have somebody who gets into that position who's more productive, and one of the more productive players is Ralston.
Yes,
and he can play. He can actually play anywhere if you think about it. He just knows. He's pretty confident now.
I was surprised with Juranovic, because he's a technician. He is a technical player, and you've seen a lot of that so comfortable with the ball at his feet. You've seen him striking from distance before he came to Celtic. You've seen what he can do with a penalty kick. He is a technical player, and I was surprised that he can't cross the ball. Is it because he's on? He's been thrown into that position. It would be interesting because I don't think we've seen it yet with Juranovic and Ralston down the right hand side. And on the flip side with Ralston in front of him. So that would be an interesting one. Jim, what's your take on the Muffet thing? I remember a story I read. Tommy Burns was talking about the Scottish Cup final of 1995, where we beat Airdrie 1-0. And he said that he almost threw Paul Byrne into that game. Now, I'm not comparing players, I'm comparing scenarios. And his reasoning and his rationale behind it was sometimes, and this was his experience as a player, you've bought into either not taking for granted, but knowing the chances are you're going to start the game or you're going to be in and out around the squad and there's a chance you might start the game. He says sometimes a player who has almost checked out of that way of thinking, when thrown in, doesn't have the same issue of preparation in terms of the mental side of the game. And you can throw him into a game and he plays with more kind of free will, etc. And he was very close to starting Paul Byrne, who hadn't played, if you look at the wiki, he hadn't played leading up to that game. I think, if Moffat was to start, fair play to him, because, I know it was a cameo appearance, but he did what he was told, he did what he was asked to do by Ange. Would it surprise you if he was to start the game on Sunday?
It's hard to second guess. Ange said, Tony there, not if you're Declan McCoy votes, no, he knows exactly what he is.
It's got him tapped.
Now, I'd be very surprised if he played Moffat, yeah. I think there's players ahead of him in the pecking order. I think just give the lad a bit of time. I think it'd be a huge surprise to throw him in that kind of game. Loads at stake as well. I think there's people ahead of the queue for him. It looks a wee bit slight as well. I guess he's a young guy coming into the team. I'd be very, very surprised if he throws him in on Sunday.
He's so young. It was his dad who was tweeting about him. That's how young he is. His dad was tweeting about him, and that was tremendous to see as well. Martin Bickett, Guy Jim a ticket. Yeah, you're right, Martin. Guy Jim a ticket. Has anybody out there got a ticket for Jim, or he will be hanging around Hampden looking for a ticket on Sunday?
My silent protest starts now. Right, so
there we go. We're talking about this never say die attitude. Some might call it metal. There's a great video kicking about. I'm amazed at how quickly these things are put together, I've got to say. I seen it on the Patriot Games Twitter. The Patriot Game joined us for the fundraiser for St Mary's, and I seen it on their Twitter. So what they've done is they've got the move leading up to Ralston's goal, and they've basically dubbed the Ange Postecoglou training session where he was talking. And honestly, it works perfectly well. And I remember after that training session where they mic'd Ange up, and there was a lot of people saying, what's he saying that's any different from amateur football and all this kind of stuff? And there was quite a lot of discerning voices around about that particular video, you'll remember. But when you watch that goal and you listen to the dialogue from that training session, it is absolutely to a T what Ange has been trying to implement from day one, Tony. A lot of people reckon it's basics, but it seems to be working. This mentality, this drive that he's put into this side.
It's the we don't stop mantra, isn't it? People were quick with the memes. One of my favourites was the pastiche of It's a Wonderful Life. Every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings, and somebody put up every time Anthony Ralston scores, an apprentice Bricky gets a rise. and there's just some clever people out there. And I wrote it, I borrowed it yesterday, and I wrote, it's a wonderful life if you're a Celtic supporter at this minute. And that's stemming from the manager. This we don't stop mentality. And that mantra was in evidence the other night. With 10 men, they were still relentless. Mm-hmm. They were pushing forward. They were trying to win the football match, which they did, because even the players realised a draw's not good enough. A draw could be severely costly. And you know what? See, if they hadn't won the football match, I don't think they could be faulted, because they gave it their all. And they were pushing and somehow they dug it out. And that's what the manager has been telling them since day one, with the mic'd up session. We don't stop. We keep going. we celebrate when we win, and then we go into the next one. And I ended to the players, all the players to a man are bought into that, and that was evident the other night. And that is a pivotal goal in the season. You know, as Jim said at the start, the narrative could have been so different. You could be sitting like that, getting into this cup final and worrying about stuff, but you're getting in there with your chest puffed out and you're pretty confident that you can win. But you have to earn the right to win in all cup finals, and you can never underestimate your opponent in any game. But if you turn up and you're professional, then there's every reason to suggest that Celtic can win. But that whole "we don't stop" mantra, it's become kind of, you know, synonymous with Ange now, hasn't it?
I think what was good about the other night was the fact I thought he picked the right team, made the right substitutions, everyone played well, everyone got stuck in. And if we hadn't scored the goal, it would have been hugely disappointing. But I'd have thought, well, you know, these things happen. Whereas there have been other games earlier this season where you thought, we've passed teams to death, you know, we haven't looked at scoring goals. Whereas the other night, actually, they did really well. And if we hadn't won the game, I'd have still felt we've done really well. And I wouldn't be that down on the manager or that down on the team. Yeah. I just thought these things happen. But that's what I thought was good about the other night. And, you know, because I thought once Stafford went off, you're thinking about, is he going to bring on Welsh now? And you think, no, we'll just go through at the back and we keep going for it. And it was great. It was really good and got that kind of just desserts at the end.
Had we drawn that, it would have been a different feeling to the Livingston and Dundee United games, Jim, as you say, because they did try. They would have gone down. Well, they would have drawn fighting basically, but
absolutely
they just refused to draw basically.
Yep. Yeah.
The big thing for me watching the game, Tony, and reacting to the game is the fact that you're still in the emotion of the match as a fan, and afterwards, I think there would have been the expected disappointment, and I think the comment section would have still reflected that disappointment. It probably would have been come the Monday or the Tuesday Bulletin where that kind of view that you've just given there would have started to filter in. You know what, wasn't that bad a performance. The going down to 10 men was massive, etc. We didn't quite get the goal. We should have had a penalty. That's the kind of discussions I think we would have been having on the Monday or Tuesday. And on that note, talking about we should have had a penalty, everybody now knows I've got my black book here with my 7 sending offs that never were. How big a part do you think the officials are going to play on Sunday, Jim? We shouldn't even be having this discussion, but it's been so poor this season. And we know that Beaton's the man in charge. I think we either come up against weak officials or just poor officials, or a combination of both. Some of them are weak. I thought the official Wednesday was particularly poor. I mean, his decision-making was non-existent at times. And I think the ref that we have on Sunday is a poor referee. Yet he is getting one of the biggest games in the Scottish calendar.
I think everything comes from the top. I wasn't on last week after the Crawford Allen furore. That was a shocking thing to say. His position's untenable as far as I'm concerned. I look for things like referees to be accountable and transparent and consistent. So this guy comes out and has a go at one of his own referees, one of his own linesmen falling a 50-50 call against Celtic. So where was he for all the ones in your black book? Where was he for all the other teams as well? You can't come out and say that and then go and hide again. And I thought this was an opportunity for Celtic, a real opportunity, and other teams, should they feel the same way, to just bombard this guy, just hound this guy, basically. Every time there's a bad decision, because the Turnbull one followed that, his comments. They should have written to Crawford Allen that Monday, give us a comment about this. He commented about this one. And the next one that happens, gives a comment about the penalty kick the other night, gives a comment about that. You keep doing that, and you keep doing it, and you keep doing that, because to me, I think we've got ridiculously poor referees. These are all the top level referees, and most of them are pretty hopeless. To the extent now it's got to the point where, what was last week? Motherwell, was it Sunday? Sunday, yeah. You go to the game because you're expecting bad decisions to be made. Not because they're biased, not because it's a conspiracy theory. They're just awful. And then in the first 10, 15 minutes last Sunday, some awful decisions, poor decisions. And what was laughable about last Sunday was the Motherwell manager was complaining about the free kick that led to the goal. And essentially what he was saying basically is the ref let our players kick them off the park. So we kicked him again, he gave a foul. I don't understand that because that's inconsistent. That's basically what he was saying. Because that's how poor the referee was. And that's now the mentality of managers. We can kick you off the park. But if you give a foul against us, we're going to complain about this. You know, And then with Malky Mackay moaning, with Nielsen moaning the other day as well. It goes from the top, and the whole system needs changed for me. And I've said before that, if Tony Haggerty wants to be a referee and takes the course, he can go and watch Celtic one day and then referee them the next day. That's just a completely bonkers system. And we need somebody different at the top of that. We need somebody who's not Scottish. We need to maybe go down to England and get an ex-referee down there, a Dermot Gallagher or something like that. Come up here, implement, modern ways of thinking, whatever they do in referee world. If we're going to have VAR coming in, we want people who've actually been used to having VAR. So for me, it starts at the top. And some of the decisions this year have just been ridiculous. Inconsistencies actually in games all the time. So you're watching this, and there's at the top end of the league, there's tens of millions of pounds at stake. At the bottom end of the league, there's maybe millions of pounds at stake if you get relegated. No matter what level of football you play at, if you play an amateur and the referee's hopeless, then it spoils the game. Because you don't know what he's going to do next. And I just think that the refereeing is so poor, and there's no accountability. The other night, if it ended up one each and we never got the penalty, that'd have been the talking point. Basically, once again, a big decision has went against that, a huge decision. And in fact, just as well we did play on, could we get the goal? Because who knows, we might have missed the penalty. So there's your karma.
Especially if Juranovic took it because he was having a howler that night.
So I just think that it's so poor, and I'm not saying it's so poor against Celtic, but if you're looking at it with a Celtic State of Mind, you're looking at the games that we've been involved in, and I think Ange's been too quiet. I understand why does he want to look as if he's making excuses, but there's ways of saying things for me. I think the first one in your black book was a Halliday tackle at the start of the season. I know it's difficult when you've lost a game to come out and say something because it sounds like sour grapes, but after the game, Ange should have come out and said, you know what? I've been coaching in Australia, I've been coaching in Japan. See there, that's a red card. And you tell me that's not a red card here, because if it's not a red card, I'll get my players to tackle like that because it's not a red card. Then you put other people on the back foot. You're getting them to explain themselves. And it's easier to make the points when you've won a game. And you should have come out the other night and said, I don't understand why Carl Stafford gets sent off. I don't understand where somebody can be elbowed in the nose, goes down with a head injury, he's bleeding on the park, the referee doesn't give a foul, doesn't stop the play. That's completely reckless refereeing for me. He's put the players' health in danger. Total incompetence. So I don't have an issue with Ange posing that question. I don't have an issue with Ange posing the question is, see if a player puts two hands up and hits the ball away, is that not a penalty in this country? Just so I understand this moving forward. And you keep putting people on the back foot, because if you don't say anything, nothing's going to happen. And I'm sure other teams have got the same issues as well, because they are so incompetent. And if you're a St Johnstone fan, the guy juggles the ball with his hands last week and scores a winning goal. So if you're a St Johnstone fan, the first thing you should be doing is saying to the St Johnstone board, get onto Crawford Allen. We want some guidance on that, because basically you can't turn around and say, make one comment and then get back into your bunker and say nothing. That's unacceptable. And I think that's an opportunity for Celtic. And then the other team, they could be from Ibrox, it could be from St Johnstone, St Mirren, whoever, to say, look, this isn't good enough. Because you know what? It's going to affect them as well at some point in time. So that's a bit of a rant there. Sorry,
I don't think it was a rant. And you're right about other teams. Dundee, Hearts and Aberdeen have all spoken out at various levels of the club about the refereeing decisions. And when you're talking about what Crawford Allen did, he set a precedent for himself. Correct. Like you say, he's then just, he's done that Homer Simpson thing right back into the hedge. And now he's ignoring the scenario. What frustrates me about it, Jim, is I think that for too long as a club, we haven't taken these opportunities to stand up. I looked at the previous CEO and Peter Lobel, and we know fine well the points I'm talking about, Jim, because we've spoken about them on a podcast. Moments where he could have stood up and was counted as a representative, as the figurehead of Celtic Football Club, and he failed to do it. I think in a very short time that Don Mackay was in charge, there were opportunities for him to do it. You think about the ticketing situation at Rangers, for example. Stand up for the club. And now Michael Nicholson has an opportunity to be that figurehead. And they fail time and time again. And I don't know why.
Sorry, but in there, I think now, because of COVID, we're now hitting another point where I'm interested to see what they do. Because at the AGM, Bankier talked about when the two games get cancelled, and he was saying, well, what can I do? Well, you stand up for the club and you do something, because it wasn't Celtic's fault. Bolingoli is an idiot. So, if you want to, you can hang him out to dry. It wasn't us, it was him. Punish him, fine him, whatever you do. But you're not going to cancel 2 of our games. That's what you do. You stand up. And for him to say that at the AGM, what was I meant to do? Do your job.
Stand up for the best interest of Celtic Football Club. You would think that was obvious to someone in his position. Now, Jim brought up Carl Starfelt, Tony, and I cannot go through this bulletin without bringing him up with yourself. I'll give you my take on this, right? What I was frustrated with wasn't the fact that, it wasn't the fact that he ended up getting sent off. It was the fact that he lost his composure. And I spoke about Juranovic losing his composure against Dundee and Joe Hart having to manhandle him back into the net. Joe Hart had a word with Starfelt. That's what frustrated me. Should he have got booked? Never in a million years did I suggest or would suggest that he should have got booked for his protestations. Absolutely not. He's had his face elbowed, his nose is all over his face. And you can understand his frustrations. But my frustration with him was that lack of composure. We know that any opportunity an official gets, he's going to give you a yellow. And then he's on a tightrope and he fell off the tightrope later on. So that's where I am. No, he shouldn't have got booked. I just wish at that stage of his career, as an international footballer who should know better, show a wee bit of composure. And I used Beaton as an example because he was similar at the beginning of the season against Midtjylland, where he's got in about the guy's face and he's given the referee a decision to make. So it's not even a dig at Scottish referees on this occasion, because that wasn't a Scottish referee. But he's given the ref a decision to make, and that's what Starfelt did. It was the wrong decision to give him the yellow card, 100%. But, maintain that composure. And I'm sure Joe Hart's had a wee chat with him since then as well, because he was the man, he was a peacemaker, if you like. Mm-hmm. Tony, on reflection, because I've already mentioned, in the heat of the moment, and you talk about a game, it's different. I noticed that last week. Speaking about the Motherwell game after the event, retrospectively watching it, knowing what the score was, you do get caught up in it. What's your take on it a couple of days later, the Starfelt scenario?
I agree that he shouldn't have been booked. Listen, if the referee sees that, he's clearly not seen it. And again, getting back to inconsistency, he's not seen it. So all he sees is Starfelt lying, crying, greeting on the floor and giving him abuse. But he should be helped out by either assistants on that. I still don't think it was a particularly malicious elbow. He got caught. And like you, I was just a bit annoyed that Jordan White was brought on to rummel Carl Starfelt up, and Carl Starfelt just bought it. He get ragdolled by Jordan White and he gets spooked and he just lost everything. He lost his composure, he lost everything. And it could have cost Celtic in the end. Still don't think he deserved to be booked sitting down with blood pouring from his face. The game should have been stopped. There is health issues there. And looking back, yeah, I see that now. But at the time, it didn't look particularly bad. It's not one of them. He's kind of caught him somewhere there. I agreed he's caught him and he's took a sore one. But I was saying he should be a bit more robust in the challenge. This guy was sent on to do that, to put him right off his game, and he did that. And I don't think he deserved a second yellow card either. I've got to be honest. It's a foul. But I don't think it was... he catches him a bit, but it's not enough to make the guy go down the way he did. But he got sent off because he was in the referee's mind. Joe Hart's had a boot at him while he's lying on the floor. I kick at him as if, shut up. You're talking yourself into bother here. But he kept going on and on and on. And that's what I was annoyed about Starfelt. Don't like seeing Celtic players lying there with blood in their face. And the game should have been stopped. But you're relying on your totally inept officials to see that. And they've not seen a lot this season when it concerns Celtic, as you've got the black book of sin. So, yeah, he just lost his shape for me and he lost his discipline. And it could have cost Celtic dear. So I was more annoyed about that. Gladly it didn't. But I just think that, it was agricultural stuff from Ross County. Put on a big centre forward to terrorise your defender. And Carl Starfelt allowed himself to be spooked and terrorised by that. And then his own game went to pot because of it. And I think that's what Joe Hart was trying to tell him. And I big up Joe Hart for that. But I don't think Starfelt deserved to walk, but again, I don't think you can add anything to Jim's rant. Quite succinct, saying everything that I guess we're all thinking. It's the standard of refereeing's just been absolutely abysmal. And again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, I'm no this or that. They're just awful. They're for every club. But because we've got a Celtic State of Mind, we're watching Celtic games, so we're picking out. But every fan who's watching their team has a litany of decisions. They must. And whenever it comes to talk about referees, it always becomes a Celtic Rangers thing. Where are Aberdeen and Hearts and Motherwell and Hibs to complain about officials? Because they're doing their clubs as well, as Jim says. It's not just Celtic and Rangers, but it always gets turned into that. And it always gets turned into that. You're paranoid. You're not paranoid. You're just talking about officials being utterly hopeless. And
There's a film called Rollerball a few years ago. It's like organised violence on the sports field. And if I'm Carl Starfelt, I'm thinking I'm just playing rollerball here, basically. And I think it's dead easy if you're sitting on the couch watching the game at home and saying, "Come on, you calm down." He's been elbowed. I mean, it's an accidental elbow. I mean, it's not a yellow card. It's not a red card. But it's a foul. I mean, he's elbowed the guy in the face. He's lying on the deck, bleeding over the turf. And the ref's waving play on. That's totally and utterly reckless. And then when he has that kind of Maddie at the referee should have just said to him, "Look, son, I'm sorry about that. I should have stopped the game." What did he say? I don't know what he said. But I don't think he said anything to calm him down. No. You know, and I understand stuff. And I kind of, you know, people have given Starfelt a hard time. I think he's been a very, very good signing. And I think he was okay the other night. And obviously, as you said, the big guy comes on and rumbles him up a wee bit. But if you're playing a game of football and somebody elbows you in the face and you're lying on the ground bleeding over the turf and the referee thinks it's acceptable to play on, you'd be going mad as well. You'd be going absolutely off your head. You know, so I'm going to cut the big chap some slack. And I think he should never have been booked for that because he was making his point. You should have stopped the game. Yeah. You know, I'm bleeding over the turf here. You haven't stopped the game. And the referee should have said, "Sorry, son," you know, and taking some of the heat out of the thing. He didn't. Books him, but just exacerbated that. And then the foul that he gets sent off for, there was a foul similar to that against Rogic not long before that. He didn't book the guy for that. So again, inconsistent and incompetence, you know. And so, you know.
Would you say, Jim, I watched the Motherwell players kick Celtic players with absolute impunity on Sunday, and the ref either spoke to them or just waved them away. Starfelt's second yellow, it's a joke.
You're right.
The guy bundles himself to the floor and he sent him off because he's been annoyed at him for. Yeah. And I get why Starfelt's annoyed. Of course it is. I've had my nose broken 3 times in a football park. I know how that feels. So
well, that's the thing. Donny Boy agrees with Jim. And you've ever taken an elbow in the... Well, if I play football, hard not to take an elbow in this beak. But I'll tell you one thing with regards to that. When Jim says something and he says it succinctly and he says it thoroughly, he then apologises for going on a rant. I don't think it is a rant, Jim. I think that you've covered all bases. My biggest issues with regards to this is the player safety aspect. Yeah. Now, you look at our injury list. We're struggling to play someone on the right-hand side if Kyogo doesn't make it on Sunday, right? We're either going to play somebody out of position or, in fact, we will be playing someone out of position on the right-hand side. And that's because we've got a long-term injury to Dembele, and it was one of the worst tackles I've seen in a pre-season friendly that I think broke his ankle. He's still out. Yeah. You've got Jamesy Forrest battling back from injury. On the left-hand side, we've got Jota who's out. So, for me, it's all about protecting our players. And yeah, I do look at it from a Celtic state of mind because that's the team I watch, like you say, Tony. But I just think there's going to come a point. What if someone comes into the side, they're playing outstandingly well, they're a great prospect, and they get their leg broken because the referees are so poor and stamping down on some of these horrific challenges that
you've only got to look back to the Turnbull tackle against Dundee United. Yeah. And it's the fact the ref saw that and gave a yellow. It'd be different if he didn't see it, and I said, didn't see it. He saw it and thought that was a yellow card. And what I've said before on the podcast, this is a retrospective thing. That system doesn't work because basically, similar to my penalty idea, that the punishment doesn't fit the crime. And what I said last time is that, situations like that for me is when those two teams play each other again, then you withdraw one of their players at the point in time he should have been sent off, and that then gives you the advantage back. But the point you're making there about that tackle could have ended Turnbull's football career, full stop. What's the repercussions for the referee who missed that? Nothing. That's the issue, and that gets back to the refereeing again. Because by missing that, that's gross incompetence. And the point you made there, Paul, is that puts players' health in danger. You're not competent to be standing in the middle and keeping control of these 22 guys. Therefore, you're demoted to League One, or whatever it is, for 3 months. Or that's one strike against you. You do another retro thing like that again, then you're getting demoted. So there is no consequences to that. And that goes back to the system again. You've got a refereeing system that allows that to happen. You know, incompetent referees refereeing more and more games, winding more and more fans up, you know, managers up, players up. You know, it's like ever decreasing circles. There's a problem. Crawford Allen's your problem, because whoever sits at the top of that is overseeing a system that's clearly not working. So you then say, well, who can change that? The SFA aren't going to change that. Why would they? The only people who can change that are the clubs. So clubs have to say something, but clubs don't say anything. And you're big Ange saying, no, we don't complain, we just go on with the game. Laudable though that is, you can't keep doing that. You have to, you know, bring these things up.
The other night, did you not mention something about people throwing obstacles in my way? It was the first time I'd kind of never specifically touched on referees, but it was a kind of obtuse hint at it. I would need to look at it, but I'm sure he kind of had a slight kind of, you know, pop at it, because he mentioned something, but I would need to go back in.
But I think also, Tony, unless you've been specific about things, that's just that's just like whistling in the wind, you know. Yeah,
I get that too, but it was the first time I'd heard them maybe make any kind of reference to it at all.
And that's why I said, just to get back to the one about the Haggerty tackle that's on Paul's list there. All you had to do was come out and say, is that not a red card in this country? Just so I know, moving forward, because if one of our players gets sent off for a tackle like that, I'll be on you like a ton of bricks, because that's obviously not a red card. And then you've marked people's cards at the start of the season. But by not saying anything, you know, Paul's book is now up to 7 or 8 instances you can say, that's happened. And maybe if something had been said at the start, maybe that wouldn't have happened. And it will continue to happen until somebody says, it doesn't have to be a Celtic person that says it. It could come from the other side of the city, it could come from Aberdeen, but somebody has to say something. And I thought him making that comment come out completely out of the blue the other week. You're thinking, there's your opportunity, there you go, because what you're looking for is consistency. You're going to comment on that, what about this and what about this, and have all these clubs just lining up saying, what about this, you know?
I agree with you, Jim, 100%. And I hope that on Sunday, during the match day, which I'll be doing with Laura and hopefully others, we won't be talking about decisions that have gone against Celtic or decisions that the ref got wrong. Looking forward to the game. As I say, we will be covering it. Have we got a ticket for you yet, Jim? Anybody got a ticket for Jim? Remember, you can DM us, you can get on the social media, let us know if you've got a ticket for Jim, or he will be outside Hampden looking for one on Sunday. Overtime. Excellent. Thanks for getting involved, Paddy. You are a loyal follower of ACSOM. Thanks everybody who's in the comments section and watching us and supporting us. And we will continue to go right up to, I think, the 23rd on the bulletins, and then we'll have some pre-recorded stuff for your enjoyment over the Christmas period as well that we'll put on the channel at 12:30. All that's left for me to say is the two gentlemen who have appeared on here with me today, Jim Orr and Tony Haggerty. Thanks for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.